Welcome to this week's episode of Around Kansas. I'm Michelle Martin, your co host. Deb is still off recovering her voice from her case of laryngitis. I have spoken to her on the phone. Those vocal cords are starting to heal, and she'll be back with us very soon. We wish her a continued speedy recovery. This week, I want to go ahead and celebrate Native American History Month by taking a look into the Around Kansas vault. And I want to share one of the first stories I brought to you on Around Kansas back in 2019. And it is the story of Chief Burnett and his connection to Brunette's Mound and the Mound's connection to the Topeka tornado. I hope you enjoy this flashback.
The most enduring legends in Topeka is that of Burnett's Mound and its association with the 1966 F5 tornado that ripped through the town. My friend Michelle Martin is back to share this incredible story with us and talk a little bit about the man behind the name. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning, Deb. Today we will explore a tornado, a mound, and a Potawatomi man, and how they are connected in Kansas history. On the evening of June 8, 1966, an ashen-faced Bill Curtis took to the television airwaves and exclaimed, "For God's sake, take cover," to warn the residents of Topeka that a tornado had jumped Burnett's Mound and was headed their direction. How could this be? The mound, according to local Native American oral tradition, was supposed to protect the city from tornadoes. Before it was Burnett's Mound, this rise in the land south of town was called Webster's Mound. Only when its most famous inhabitant arrived was it renamed. Abram Barnett was born near the Tippecanoe River in Indiana in 1812. His given name was Nunweshma, he who prays with plants. He was educated near Fort Wayne, Indiana, at a Baptist mission run by the Reverend Isaac McCoy. He served McCoy as a translator in the 1820s, and this skill served him and his people well. As a young man, Nunweshma, along with other Potawatomi, were forced to move west to the Indian Territory on the Potawatomi Trail of Death in 1838. The people suffered greatly along the way. His first wife died shortly after their arrival in southeast Kansas. In 1843, he married a German immigrant named Marie. By 1848, Nunweshma, Marie, and their growing family settled near the base of Webster's Mound. He was a successful farmer. He sold and traded horses and served his people as a hereditary chief. The mound near his home was renamed Burnett's Mound during his lifetime owing to his notoriety. Over the years, he was known to be a snappy dresser, but he still maintained many Potawatomi traditions, including wearing moccasins and wrapping himself in a blanket. Nunweshma was also known for his stature. At the time of his death on June 14, 1870, he was said to be the largest man in Kansas, topping the scales at 450 pounds. When A.F. Whiting made his coffin of black walnut, he said it was twice the size of any he had made before. Stories began to circulate after Nunweshma's death that he buried treasure near his cabin. Looters and grave robbers began digging in earnest, but never found any riches. Others began to dig in the cemetery where Nunweshma and other locals were buried near the mound. Eventually, the mound itself was reshaped to make way for roads and a water tower atop its peak. Perhaps later residents forgot the most important part of the native oral tradition. Desecrating the mound in any way rendered its protective powers useless. Now you know how a tornado, a mound, and Nunweshma are connected in Kansas history. I look forward to seeing you next time on another historical journey around Kansas.
Once again, so thankful to share my Wednesday mornings with you and wishing each and every one of you, from all of us here at Ag AM and Around Kansas, a very blessed Thanksgiving. And we'll see you somewhere around Kansas.
In 1821, a trade route was opened from Missouri in the United States across prairies and mountains to Mexico. In 2021, we will mark 200 years of epic conflicts and grand adventures, larger-than-life personalities, and sweeping landscapes. Join us on an historic journey The Santa Fe Trail lives on.
Find us on social media or santafetrail.org. Welcome to the Western Kansas Wildlife Travel Center, right here in my hometown of Oakley, Kansas. We're the front door of Western Kansas, located on 3 main highways, I-70, US 83, and US 40. And all those roads lead to history, beautiful scenery, and adventure, no matter which direction you go. We now have an IHOP. That brand that you've trusted up and down the road in all your travels is staffed with local folks, real people, just like you and me, and we're waiting on you to join us. So for fun, adventure, fuel up, fuel your body, and let's have some fun.
Welcome back to Around Kansas. I'm Michelle Martin, your co-host. I don't know about all of you, but when I moved to a larger city, one of the things I missed the most was hearing the sounds that you hear from various wildlife. And in particular, I grew up in a part of southwestern Lower Michigan where we heard owls on a regular basis. As a matter of fact, at my parents' home, you could be asleep in your bed in the basement, and we had so many trees around our house. We would hear the owls at night, especially this time of year as we're getting into fall. So I thought I'd take a look in our Around Kansas Wildlife Vault, and I found a fantastic story that reminds me of fall. And we're going to take a look at owls in Kansas.
Folks, well, the other night we were walking, Dr. Jake and I went out walking because it had cooled down to what, 80 degrees or something, after the sun went down, and the breeze was really nice, and it was the night of the blue moon, the second full moon of the month in July. It was just beautiful. It was like you've got the whole world to yourself, the fields stretching out in every direction, and then this horrible screeching started. And he had pointed out a few days before that there were a couple of owls like out by the barnyard, and he points those out, and we're a little bit concerned about that because we got all these barn cats, and we need all these barn cats because they keep away the rattlesnakes. No joke. So we got a new crop of kittens, and if you need a kitten, you can see it. And so we're kind of noticed the owls. Frank, I felt like I was in the middle of a Harry Potter movie with this screeching going on all around us.
Owls are fascinating birds.
They
really
are fascinating birds. They really are. And when they talk about their silent flight, that's absolutely true.
Uh-huh.
No sound at all when they're flying. And then you hear screams, and you probably hear the blood-curdling screams of what's being grabbed by the owls and everything. But man, they were everywhere. They were on both sides of the country road there. They were just all over the place.
I have an idea. Do a story on owls.
I just happen to have one right here. Barn owls are the most widely distributed of any of the owl species, as evidenced by the numerous screeches in the night and the poop in the sheds. Apparently, it lives everywhere but Antarctica. According to the Great Plains Nature Center in Wichita, one of the qualities that makes the barn owl such an efficient hunter is its hearing. Although the barn owl has excellent night vision, its ears may be even more important for catching food. Experiments have shown that prey can be located and captured by sound alone. What amazing creatures! Like many nocturnal animals, barn owls often live in the midst of people without their even knowing. They like to roost high and away in old buildings, sometimes choosing the proverbial hollow tree. Females usually lay at least 4 eggs, but might have as many as a dozen. Hatching is staggered, so that a nest might have young birds along with those still waiting to break through their eggs. This could help explain why this owl is so prolific. Seemingly every creature that roams the prairies at night feasts on field mice, kangaroo rats, and other rodents. The barn owl is no different. It occasionally varies its diet with insects, lizards, frogs, crayfish, and yes, even snakes. The other owls that live in Kansas are eastern screech owls, the short and long-eared owls, barred owls, burrowing owls, snowy owls, northern saw-whet owls, and great horned owls. Take a walk at night and listen. Chances are there is an owl listening to you as well.
Okay, we have to go again. I'm Frank.
I'm Deb.
And we'll see you somewhere around Kansas.
Howdy, I'm Seth Hayes, and welcome to my hometown, from then to now. Council Grove has a rich history as deep as the prairie tallgrass. Spend the day visiting 25 historic sites, or explore the unique shops and restaurants, or mosey out of town along the Santa Fe Trail. You all visit my hometown, Council Grove, in the heart of the Flint Hills.
Okay, looks like it's time for our tour. Welcome to the Fort Wallace Museum. Here at the museum, you're going to find some really interesting stuff, like our replica stagecoach from the Butterfield Overland Dispatch. We've got facades from the fort buildings. We've got an 1870s flag. There's a plesiosaur that was discovered locally. We've got the Ray pump organ collection. We're a little bitty place with a great big story, and we'd love to have you.
Welcome back to Around Kansas. I'm Michelle Martin, your co-host. Deb is still recovering her vocal cords from that nasty case of laryngitis. She will be back with us really soon, and we wish her a continued recovery. Today on our fun segment, I want to share with you the fun you can have in the pages of good books. And we're going to share with you some authors today who are from or live in Kansas or have lived in Kansas. And Kansas and Kansas experiences feature prominently into their work. Our first individual is Kendall Gott. And Ken Gott is a good friend of Deb's and mine. And actually, Kendall worked as a senior staff historian for the Combat Studies Institute at Fort Leavenworth. And when he retired, instead of writing stuffy, dry analytical history, he decided to have some fun and dipped his toes into the waters of historical novels. And I can't think of anyone better suited because he has a great imagination, he has a love of Kansas history, and he is a meticulous researcher. So, if you've ever wondered what it's like to be a steamboat captain, and a steamboat captain during the Civil War, for that matter, you might want to look at his books, Steamboat Seasons and Backwater Battles, and Steamboat Seasons, Dawn of a New Era, that follows his main character, who is a young steamboat captain trying to make his way in the 19th century world. And of course, he's going to get caught up in all kinds of adventures that one would have while piloting a steamboat. And also piloting steamboats during the Civil War. Now, he also, Kendall likes to joke, he says that I made him famous because he was involved in a television documentary project I was in for the History Channel about the Battle of Mine Creek. And so he has taken his interest in the Battle of Mine Creek and turned that into a historical novel called Ride to Oblivion that actually discusses the entire 1864 campaign of Confederate General Sterling Price. And I got to tell you, folks, from the military standpoint, we know it was pretty ill-conceived. May have seemed like a great idea to Price, but in practicality, it didn't work well. But he has turned the events of Price's 1864 raid into a fantastic historical read. And his most recent book is called Gone to Kansas, 1855. And he is now picking up what life was like for individuals who would have made their way west to Kansas to settle during that tumultuous period we know as Bleeding Kansas. So give the historical novels of our good friend Kendall Gott a read. Now, to step into the pages of history, and in particular, how important family history can be, We want to give a shout out to our good friend Ken Spurgeon. Ken has a fantastic volume published with the History Press called Kansas Soldier at War. And it is based on an amazing treasure trove of letters written between Christian and Elsie Dubach Isley. And they are Ken's relatives. And Christian and Elsie wrote back and forth to one another during the course of the war, and they wrote to other friends, and the letters survive, which is a miracle. But what you get from Ken's book, Kansas Soldier at War, is an intimate portrait of a couple, how they navigate the absence, Christian's absence away from home during the course of the war, and the trials and the tribulations that they face. So, if you love family history and love reading letters from the time period, give Ken's book a try. Now, I would be remiss if I did not go ahead and actually share some titles that Deb has written, because Deb herself is a prolific and excellent authoress. And her book, Civil War Kansas, written for the History Press, really covers the history of Kansas from the Bleeding Kansas period through the end of the Civil War. And if you want a riveting, highly readable, gripping, and incredible account of what was taking place here, pick up Deb's book, Civil War Kansas. She also channeled her love of music into her book, Kansas Music, in which she looks at the history and the trajectory of Kansas music. Everything from fiddle playing on the prairie to the rock band Kansas and everything in between. She really gives us a fantastic portrait of how Kansas has shaped people and their music. Okay, folks, you knew we were going to have to do this eventually. Yes, Kansas Sports and Bases, and I am so fortunate to have co-authored that with Deb. And Kansas Sports and Bases, we covered the history of Kansas Sports and Bases from Fort DeCavignon and very early forts all the way through the 20th century. And what we love about the book, and one of the reasons we wrote the book, was to be able to provide you with a great book that gave you interesting vignettes and histories of the people who lived at and called the forts and bases their home, but it's also a great travel guide. So if you're looking for places to go this winter, or if you're already dreaming of spring travel, and let's all hope it is COVID-free travel, if you are looking for a great way to see Kansas and explore its history through forts and bases, Kansas Forts and Bases helps you do that. Now, our last author today, our authoress, actually lived in the Wichita area for several years, and her second book, The Storm Chasers, Kansas and the Weather of the Central Plains, is a huge character and component. It is none other than New York Times bestselling authoress Jenna Blum. And Jenna has a new work out that really will talk to everyone, especially if you have ever loved and lost a beloved dog. Jenna's new book, Woodrow, um, her book, Woodrow on the Bench, Life Lessons from a Wise Old Dog. And I'm sorry, I get emotional because Jenna is a dear friend, but I knew Woodrow. I had the chance to hike several places in Kansas with Jenna and Woodrow. And I actually remember him when he was known as Woodrow the Storm Chasing Lab. And as he became an elder statesman lab, he was then Woodrow the George Clooney of dogs because he was so rakishly handsome and attractive. But her new book is a memoir about caring for her beloved black lab, Woodrow, and the last months of his life, and what it was like to lose him after having been a constant companion for 15 years. And so, for those of us who know Jenna, but also knew Woodrow, it's especially poignant. But I think all of you will love the book, especially if you have loved and lost a beloved dog or even another four legged creature. Those emotions speak to all of us. So, I think everyone should be picking up Woodrow on the Bench, Life Lessons from a Wise Old Dog. We'll provide you information in the links so you can find these amazing books for yourself or for gifting this holiday season. That's all we have this week. But before I go, I have one very special message, and that is to my dad. This week, my dad is celebrating his birthday back home in Michigan. And I wanted to take a chance to say, Happy birthday, Pop. I love you. All right, folks, that's all the time we have today. Hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and we'll see you again someplace, sometime real soon, somewhere around Kansas. Bye bye.